How many of you, show of hands, have been to Philadelphia? Okay. And how many of you been to the Philadelphia Museum of Art? 1, 2. And why did you go to the Philadelphia Museum of Art?
To prove I can still run up the steps.
And why did you go?
Because we did a concert in
Okay. Did you run up the steps? Okay. See, the Philadelphia Museum of Art is a famous landmark in Philadelphia. Probably not because of the art, and probably not because of your concert, even though I'm sure it was very good. The Philadelphia Museum of Art are the steps that Sylvester Stallone ran up when he did Rocky. If any of you have been around me long enough, this next statement is not going to surprise you. All of life is a Rocky movie. I am a huge Rocky Balboa fan, love the films, love it all. And if you've seen the films, has anybody seen the Rocky films? You know what we're talking about when we talk about Rocky, right? Okay. It's kind of iconic. It's not Sylvester Stallone, and okay. Yeah. Anyway, he's done about 40, there's Rocky 40 movies of Rocky. But when I say all of life is a Rocky movie, Rocky 1, that first one, the one that wins the Academy Award. In the early part of that movie, he comes to the steps of that art museum, and there's 72 steps from top to bottom, 72 steps. And he gets there, and he has this big idea that he is going to fight for the world title, but he's just kind of a ham and egg, he's a nobody. And he gets to the bottom of the steps on the very first day that he's out for a run, because he does what we do sometimes. We get in our head that we're going to get in shape, and we think we can do it in a day. And so by the time he gets to the museum, he's so dead, he's so dead-legged, he can barely get up the steps. And the first shot you have of Rocky traveling up those 72 steps is he's got a cramp in his side, he gets to the top, and he basically just gets to the top and just wanders back off. Fast forward an hour later into the film, you can get in shape in an hour. Who knew? Drink a few raw eggs, next thing you know, Rocky Balboa is hitting the steps of that museum in the early morning hours on the Philadelphia morning, and he charges to the top of that with the Bill Conti music playing behind him, going to fly now, and he gets to the top, and he spreads his arms, and he does this dance, and there's no one there to see him, but he's in this all ratty sweatshirt, and all of a sudden, when they freeze frame that thing, you know that Apollo Creed is in for the fight of his life in the World Championship. Rocky won. It's all about going the distance. When he gets to the top of those steps, he did it. He did what he knew he couldn't do. He became ready for this battle that was a once-in-a-lifetime battle. Famous closing line of Rocky, before he told Adrian he loved her, is when he leans on Apollo Creed at the end of the match, and Creed says to him, "Ain't going to be no rematch." And Rocky Balboa and Sylvester Stallone, that distinctive voice says, "Don't want one. Fight is over, don't want one, it's over." He doesn't win, he goes the distance. When you win an Academy Award and make too much money, you got to come back. By the time you get to Rocky 2, there's a whole different scenario going on. And all of a sudden, Rocky's kind of doing that same putzing around again. And it's not until his wife, Adrian, looks at him from a hospital bed and says, "I want you to do one thing for me." And he says, "What?" He goes, "Win." And all of a sudden, the music goes, ding. And you know what's coming. The bell goes off. And Mickey goes, "What am I waiting for?" And the next thing you know, here's Rocky working out again, and he hits the steps. And this time when he hits the steps, he has every child in Philadelphia chasing him up the steps of this museum, 72 steps, and they all get up there, and they all dance together. It's awesome. It's unbelievable. Rocky 3 comes along. The steps are now so iconic, they put a statue of Rocky Balboa at the top of the steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum. They unveil it, and all of a sudden, Rocky is now standing there forever, and this is what the statue looks like. It's a lot bigger. Well, so Stallone is pretty short. Anyway, but this is life size. Stallone stands back here and look up at it. But this is what it looks like. And people came from miles around to see that statue. Now, City of Philadelphia decided that they didn't want it. The Art Museum decided they didn't want it, so they ended up sending it back to Sylvester Stallone. It stood in his backyard. He made the grand quote, "As long as pigeons need a place to poop, they'll have my statue." But so many people came to Philadelphia to see the statue. See, no one cared there was art in the museum. Who gives a rip about art? They wanted to see Rocky. They wanted to see the Rocky statue. And so the crowd began to chant, "Rocky, Rocky, Rocky." And they called Stallone and said, "Can we have the statue back?" Yeah, sure. So right now, if you go to Philadelphia, to the right-hand side, on the ground, not on the steps, but on the ground, there's the Rocky Balboa statue. Like the one they used in the movie, it's there. You can go, you can have your photo made. There's guys selling T-shirts, Rocky T-shirts. They're right there by it. Street vendors. And they're hawking their shirts, and for a fee, they'll take your picture because that's how they make their living. And you can go and have your picture made. The other thing you can do, though, is you can actually pull up in front of the museum, stop illegally, because it's an open street, and you have to pay to park. It's $12 to park in the parking lot, which is kind of a lot, I think, to go look at a set of steps. So you park illegally like everybody else does. You get out of your car, and you run up to the top of the steps, just like Rocky did. 72 steps to the top. I want you to know, if you don't run, 72 steps is pretty tough. Pretty hard to get up them steps with any kind of speed. I've been to Philadelphia a number of times, and I've run the steps a number of times. And when I say all of life is like a Rocky movie, because by the time it was over with, Rocky shows up, the character Rocky shows up in a couple of the Creed movies. And if you saw those, Sylvester Stallone brings Rocky back to life, but this time Rocky has cancer. We watch Rocky Balboa battle cancer while he trains Creed. And the last time, Creed, when he goes up the steps, he's actually being helped by Adonis Creed, Apollo Creed's son. And so Stallone can't run up the steps in the movie. He's walking up the steps. And Creed's helping him. And Rocky says something along the lines of, you know, from the top of these steps, you can look out and you can see the world from here. And so Creed looks at him and says, how do you feel now, old man? He says he feels young. And you think, man, that's a great ending. That's a great way to kind of end this whole saga full circle. And all of a sudden, gosh, you can't make enough money. So Rocky Balboa is released. Rocky's still not dead. He's still at it. He's going to come out one more time. And in this movie, he's going to come out of retirement to fight what is an exhibition fight. And so the last time you see him going up the steps, it's a much older man, running just as hard, a lot heavier, carrying a lot more mass up them steps, but he recreates that first run, this time with a dog, and picks that dog up, and in the early morning Philadelphia light, dances again where nobody can see him. And the snow falls and it freezes on that, and you know, once again, he's getting ready to win. You know he's going to win. At the top of the steps in Philadelphia, there's a piece of, it's a piece of bronze that is implanted into the top step of concrete where Rocky Balboa stood. Stallone has signed it, but he signed it Rocky. And he stepped on it, and his boot prints are in there. So you can actually go and stand on the boot prints and raise your arms, and you can dance if you want to, and people do that all day long. It doesn't matter what time day or night you go there. People go to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, not to see the art, because no one cares, to look at a statue and run up 72 steps and dance. And usually, people have this unspoken code. They let each other go, right up the middle. They don't get in your way. And over the course of an hour, you watch person after person. It's almost like they form an informal line at the bottom of the steps. My turn? My turn. My turn. And off you go. They don't watch you because it's embarrassing watching some people run. Some people can't run. And they get to the top and they dance and they pose. And you know, there's no one usually there to take their picture. And you just look out over the city, back down the steps, the next person runs. It's the most amazing thing to see. First time I went to Philadelphia, had some time to kill, so I was watching this. I'm like, this is so bizarre. This is so weird because I came there to run the steps. And so when it was my turn, I ran the steps, and I danced like everybody else, but you don't feel so dumb because there's people waiting in line to do it. And then you get out of the way and do it again. The second time I went back to Philadelphia, I was going to do the same thing again because I'm a fan. This time I stayed to the side of the steps, and I started talking to the people that were running, and I asked them this question. Why are you here? Why are you running? Over the course of an hour, I met a lady who had finally finished her cancer treatments. And she said this is what she came to do. She said the whole time she was in chemo that she was going to come to the Rocky Steps and run the Rocky Steps and stand at the top when she was finally done with her cancer treatment. And that's what she did that day. That's why she was there that day. I didn't think she was going to make it to the top, but she did. Come to find out, she had just finished her last treatment and came directly to the steps and ran. Girls track team ran to the top very fast. Why were they there? They're there for the state championships. So this is their last moment of, we're going to hype it up and we're going to get excited because we're going to go do our best and we're going to run the state championships. And we thought that this would motivate us to do it. A guy runs up in a suit. At the top of it, he stood there for a minute. He didn't dance. He just kind of stood in the footsteps and he just kind of looked down for a long time. When he came down the steps, I said, hey, man, I'm a pastor. I'm from Florida. I've run the steps myself. Why, you're in a suit. Why are you running the steps? Because I ran the steps because my dad and I, our favorite movie was Rocky. My dad passed away. And so I knew as soon as I got back to Philadelphia, I wanted to run the steps one more time. We did this together a few years ago. Story after story of people who came for one reason. Because they had overcome something. They had accomplished something. There was a moment. There was a memory. There was something that had happened. And somehow running a set of steps, and remembering that a fictional character had done it, became symbolic for them of achieving something amazing. See, we started this morning, and I said to you, the impact of your leadership will last for generations. I don't know if you've heard Sylvester Stallone recently. In an article he said, I finally got to the point when I had to make Rocky Balboa as a movie that nobody wanted to make. He said, because my life ebbed and flowed with Rocky movies. He said, I've had it all, I've lost it all. I've loved, I've lost it, love. I've had a family, I've lost my family, and I have a family again. He said, somewhere before I finally made this movie, it dawned on me that I needed to quit doing things myself. And I needed to trust God so I could get it right. And so Rocky Balboa is my testament and my testimony to God and his faithfulness. If you go all the way back to the first Rocky movie, if you go watch it tonight, the opening scene of Rocky Balboa takes place, and the first image you see on the screen is Jesus Christ. It's not trick photography. It's a painting on the wall of the little place that he's fighting as a club fighter, and it pans out from Jesus, and you see Rocky just getting beat up in the ring. He says, I started the film series with Jesus and didn't even know what I was doing. He said, I want people to see that your life can be something and you can achieve greatness if you'll just stay with it. One of the things for us as leaders, we have to understand, leadership is tough. If you're not bleeding, you're not leading, okay? Everybody's not going to, leading is not a popularity contest. Leading is a skill set, it's work. And so if you're not taking, if no one is upset at you, you're not doing it right. I can promise you that. If you're not taking a few dings, you're not getting it right. But what we said this morning and what you've heard over and over again all day, and I know in every breakout I've been able to stick my head in all of them at one, is you've been hearing this theme that just keeps reoccurring, that it is work and there's discipline to it, but you can do it, and pouring your life into others and inspiring them and helping them to become something greater than they could possibly be, and move them toward a goal and to stay on track. All of those things are worth it. And so I share that story to say with you, we're all on those 72 steps somewhere. And there's times where we're at the top and we're dancing. I know I have been as a leader. And there's other times I'm at the bottom with a cramp and I can't get up the next step. But it's worth going to the top and it's worth taking the journey. Because you know what? When you get up there and you look out over the city, you do really feel like you could see forever from up there. There is nothing as exhilarating as leadership when you do it well and you do it right. As a pastor, I can tell you there's nothing exhilarating as knowing that you have led and you did what God wanted you to do. And you get to see the results. And so my hope and prayer for you is that all the things we learned today, we're going to have some fun. We're getting ready to talk about Christmas dreams in a minute, but as we kind of wrap up this leadership portion of it, I want you to know that it's worth the journey up the steps. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, you don't have to do it right now, just when you leave today. I couldn't recreate 72 steps for you. So I came up with one, just one. Most of you are in good physical shape, you could do this. My assumption is when you walk out the door today, you're going to walk out and get to the top of the steps, and just before you walk out, give us one of these. And out and go away. We won't take your picture. We'll be kind. We won't look at you too funny. Do it 72 times. But do it as a reminder on the way out the door that, you know what we did today is just a start, right? I mean, and as you look around this room, we're all in this thing together. We're trying to be leaders. Let me be non-pastoral for just a minute. I suck as a leader. But the grace of God has kept me in the game. Leading is not my first nature. It's not my second nature. That's something I have to work at all the time. Because I'm just like everybody else. I lose focus sometimes, but it's worth it. And it's worth the fight, and it's worth the battle. And so stay in it and don't stop. And enjoy the journey. And give God the glory for it. Because, you know, you're not really doing it anyway. He is. And celebrate it. Celebrate the wins. Never celebrate and quit. Don't celebrate quitting. Don't celebrate staying at the bottom of the steps. All right. That's my wrap-up. Now, we're going to go to the video screen, and then you're coming up. We practice this. See how in sync we are here? Look at the screens.
So by now, you know a little bit about Christmas Dreams and you recognize our logo, but we are so much more than a logo. Since our beginnings, 1,000 families have received a personal experience from Christmas Dreams with our Christmas is Coming trailer, Santa visits to the NICU, flights to the North Pole, and personalized family visits. More than 3,000 pillowcases have been made by our Sewing Elf Brigade to bring joy to children. We have decorated Advent Health for more than 10 years. More than 10,000 families have been impacted across Central Florida and Kentucky by Christmas Dreams. And we're just getting started. Imagine how many more lives could be reached with an indoor-themed resort. I'm sure by now you have fallen in love with Christmas Dreams and are asking yourself how you can help. It's easy. Follow us on all of our social media channels and share what we're doing with your friends and family. You can go a step beyond that and become a brand ambassador. As an ambassador, you will purposely share Christmas Dreams with everyone you know and everyone you meet. You could join our Sewing Elf Brigade and help make pillowcases. Attend Elf University to get trained and join our team that takes Christmas is Coming where it's needed. Of course, you could financially support us with a monthly gift or a one-time gift. Hire us for your company Christmas parties and celebrations. We can bring the Kringle cast, which includes Santa, Mrs. Claus, and the elves. We could even bring the Christmas is Coming experience. We can do team building, story time with Santa, cookie making with Mrs. Claus, reindeer games. The possibilities are endless. If you can dream it, we can do it. Santa says one surefire way to make sure you stay on the nice list is to help us make the Christmas dreams of children come true. We hope we can count on you to not be naughty.
I was amazed when I was challenged to go back and add up and see what our impact had been so far. I was floored. I had no idea that we had impacted that many families, and a lot of you in this room were part of that, so I wanted to say thank you. But I also wanted to take a moment just to share a few personal stories. I mean, those are big numbers. But one of my favorite pictures is this little girl right here, and unfortunately, none of us remember her name. We see a lot of kids during a year, but this little girl came in, and I'm a jingle elf. I don't work inside the trailer. I work outside, and so she had come up, and she was wouldn't say anything, just very, very shy. And we learned by talking to her mother, she has not spoken in years. I'm not really sure what happened, but something happened and she just kind of closed off, and it might have been the illness or might have been something else, but she was very nonverbal. And we're like, that's okay. She didn't have to say anything. We're still gonna have a great time today, you know, so didn't really say anything. So we see her go in, and then, of course, nobody inside the trailer knew that because that was a conversation we had outside. So she made the cookie with Mrs. Claus, she played with Tinker Elf, and she went into Santa's man cave. So then at the end of the day, we always have a defrost where I gather my team up and let's talk about what happened today. We need to talk through this. And Santa tells us that this little girl said He gets me even now. Shoot. She talked to him. He didn't quite catch what she said because my Santas are older and their hearing's not real great. And she talked really soft, but she talked to him. So when I started this day saying, I'm in Santa's man cave and I'm on holy ground, that was a miracle that happened that day. And Santa brought that out in her and gave her a safe place and a safe person to talk to. So what a cool thing. And he didn't know that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. She doesn't talk. I'm like, did you tell her mother that she said something to you? So we needed to let the nurse know. She talked to Santa. That's good. You need to know that. So that was one story. And then another time, this is even before the trailer was made. Santa and I were going into the NICU for the very first time. Didn't know what to expect, so we're praying before we go in. What do we say? What do we do? I don't know. We're just going to count on God to lead us and direct us. So we were visiting a lot of the babies, and we were concentrating, don't look at the tubes, just see the baby. Love the baby, and let your face say, I love you so much, and Jesus loves you, and they're going to capture that in the photos, and it's going to be great. So we're going from one isolate to the next, on the next, and all of a sudden there's a commotion, and they have just wheeled a baby in, and the whole family is coming in. It's kind of chaotic. It's mom, it's dad, it's grandparents, and it's kind of a mess. And so we hear it going on, and we're like, okay, not really sure, but we're over here doing our thing. Well, they come to get us and say, can you come be with this family? We're like, absolutely, that's why we're here. And so we went over, and I'm kind of talking with mom, and Santa's over by dad, and dad is falling apart. Dad is a hot mess. And so I was glad Santa was dealing with him. So I was talking to mom, and I was like, oh my goodness, how long ago was she born? Oh, 2 days ago. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you look amazing, and they're from Merritt Island. They had to fly the baby in. And so she's there, and she's got this cute little hat on. So I said, oh, what a cute hat. Did you make that, or did one of the grandmas make it? Oh, no, it's one of the ministries over at Merritt Island. They gave her the little hat. And I said, oh, well, it's so cute. And they go, yeah, it's covering this. And they took it off. And her head was such a mess, and it had already been through 2 surgeries, I think. And so I'm like, okay, can't fall apart. God, what are you doing here? And Dad just grabbed Santa and says, gonna be okay, right, Santa? It's gonna be okay. And to our credit, Santa goes, it's gonna be all right. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna get through that, So we do our best part. We go off behind the scenes and he's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I don't know how you did that. And he goes, I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't know. And I said, you told him the truth. No matter what happens, it's gonna be okay. And I think I called Jeff on the way home, and I said, oh my goodness, God just pulled back the veil for a second, and I understand the bigness of this ministry that he's called me to. This is so much bigger than what I ever imagined it would be, and the holy ground moment that we were invited to in that moment to say, this is the darkest time this family has faced, and we were invited in. What a privilege that was. What an honor that was. And so I want to work really hard not to screw those up, and I want to do a really great job. And I am so humbled, and I don't understand why God called me to do this, because I fall apart all the time. I'm always having to run backstage, off stage, and fall apart. And one of the child life specialists said, oh, honey, if you don't fall apart, you ought not be doing it. If my nurses don't fall apart, we don't do it. It needs to break your heart. This is heartbreaking stuff. So I don't know why God's called me, but I'm glad that he has. And I've answered the call, and I'm usually pretty humble about it because, I know it's not everybody's dream. But I have been challenged this last year by our pastor to be bold. And so I have determined that I'm going to boldly go forward. And the thought in my head is, I'm going to be bold with this dream and trust that God has sent me into this room to talk to you, into this conversation. And so I boldly enter into those, and I am asking you to consider going with me. Thank you.
Let me tell you why I'm involved in Christmas Dreams. LeeAnn came to my office one day and asked one question. She said, wouldn't it be great if there would be a place where families could come with sick kids to be Christmas all year long? Wow. could we build a place like that? Could we do that? That was just the conversation. And me and my infinite wisdom, and again, winging it and never thinking about what I was going to say, I said, "No, sure, why can't we?" And next thing I know, she is running, and she is now chasing this dream, and has dragged us all along in her wake, which has been fun. Let me tell you why, though. For me, it resonates like it does. I have a daughter, and she's not here, which is why I'm getting ready to tell this story. If she were here, I wouldn't tell the story. She is 30, none of your business, and she is a part of our worship team. Most of you have met her. You know her. Her name's Brooke. But when Brooke was a little girl, we almost lost Brooke. Brooke has a disease called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a disease that is normally, boys normally have it. It's an arthritis that is systemic and it attacks your organs. And she got it when she was 18 months old. Took them over a year almost to get it diagnosed properly. And by then, the treatments and everything else had attacked her body in so many different ways, surgeries. She lost the ability to walk at one point. As a little kid, she had a walker for a while. I remember one year during the Olympics, my little daughter, about this big, with a walker, was doing flips over the top of the walker because she was watching on TV and trying to be a gymnast, but she couldn't straighten her legs out. And my move to Central Florida came in the midst of her treatments for this disease, and it was done under the impression she'll be okay if. Well, what do you mean if? If we can get her the assistance she needs, if we can get her the help that she needs, she'll be okay, but it's not going to be an easy road. And we don't know how it's going to end up. Well, that's a little vague. She was patient 2 at Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital. Patient 2. We were actually here before they got the hospital open. So we were one of the first patients in the hospital. As a little girl, she went to therapy, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. She couldn't go to school when it was time to go to school. She was at the hospital every day. And we drug her there every single day, and we watched as the doctors would work on joints, and the therapists would work on joints, and would break apart cartilage that had formed, and they would bust apart the joints so she wouldn't lose the motion in them, so the growth plate would continue to grow, and she would cry, and she would scream. And it was brutal, and I would have to hold her down sometimes. Long before there was the Altamont Mall, we had a place here called the Winter Park Mall. Winter Park Mall is a little big mall where that's where everybody went, and that's what a mall used to be, small. And on the way home, we'd always say, Brooke, it was around Christmas time, Brooke, what do you want to do? It's been a rough day, let's go do something nice. I mean, we didn't know if she was going to be around. We would have bought anything in that mall. We'd have taken her anywhere she wanted to go, and she said, I want to go see Santa Claus. And so we took her to the Winter Park Mall that very first day. And before she talked to Santa Claus, it was a slow day. And so I told Santa where she had been. And he took that moment with nobody in line and began talking to my kid. I have no idea what he said. But I heard her laugh. First time, a long time I heard her laugh. And we left, and we went to therapy the next day. And the next day I said, Brooke, what do you want to do? Let's go see Santa Claus. Off to the mall again, we're back to see Santa Claus. We saw Santa Claus every day during the Christmas season. I have a picture of that I always have with me. It's getting old, and I've laminated it a few times. I'll let you look at it. We can pass it around if you want to see it. You'll know which one's my daughter because she's the girl. But you'll also recognize her because she's pasty white and looks incredibly sick. Sitting on Santa Claus's lap. And here's how I know that Santa Claus is real. Because every day after therapy, I watched whoever that guy is, and he's Santa Claus, hold my daughter, make her laugh. As I took her out of his lap, he had a tear in his eye, and I watched him cry. Santa cried over my logo. He's very, very real. And there's something about that magic that happens when you have Christmas moments that changes everything. And that's what we get to do with Christmas Dreams. I don't begin to understand it. I don't begin to explain it. I know that it gets kind of uncomfortable and weird at times because faith enters into this thing, and of course that's what Christmas is about. And so we have those conversations, and we enter into that holy place that LeeAnn was talking about, and we get to see the miraculous things happen. And all I know is this, that God has called us as people to be a part of this, and we are pouring our lives, and we're impacting families in ways that is very unique in all of Central Florida, and maybe the world. And so what we want you to do is we want you to pray for us. And I say us, I mean this network of people. There's a group that is heading to Kentucky this next week, and so please pray for them. On Friday, do you leave? They leave on Friday. They'll be gone a week. They're going to see people. They're going to go through a massive number of kids. It's going to be tough on the cast. It's going to be, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of logistics. I mean, we're taking a 40-foot trailer that is loaded with Christmas experiences. And so at that moment, I mean, we're in a brand new territory, and we have to figure a lot of things out on the fly. And so just pray, if you wouldn't mind. Pray for us every day as that happens. Also, though you're here, and we're doing this leadership thing, we want you to be good leaders. Tell other people about Christmas Dreams. Oh my gosh, become someone that can talk and lead and get people to understand who we are and what we're trying to do. There are connection points. You've heard her mention them in the video. I mean, you can be an ambassador for us, and we've got folks that are doing pop-up kind of things, and we're trying to, just get the brand out a little bit. I know that sounds so commercial. Hey, you know what? It takes money to do this. And God's got all the cows and cattle on 1,000 hillsides. Rick will tell you that. We need to kill a cow sometimes. Find somebody who's got a cow so they can kill it. We can use the money. I was going to say, I'm going to take this, I'm going to pass it around the room until it's full of cash. I'm not going to do that. That would be far too Baptist of me. So what I'm going to simply do instead is simply say, hey, look, and take a look at what you do. What you do with the money that you give, that generosity that you have. I mean, we'll take checks, we'll take cash, we'll even use debit cards. I mean, whatever you got, we are just trying to accomplish some things, and we want you to be a part of that network with us. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this with a word of prayer. We'll be done. It's early. If you have money, give it to LeeAnn. But more than anything else, just thank you for being here today, and thanks for being a part of this dream. We're doing this because we want to make good leaders, but also for Christmas Dreams. Christmas Dreams is so much more than just a trailer and Santa Claus. As you heard from the list, we're doing all sorts of different things, and there's so many different ways that we're impacting the lives of others. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. Follow us on all social media, do all those kind of things you're supposed to do, and we sure would appreciate it, okay? Let's bow our heads and hearts. Let's pray. Let's close our time together. God, we're thankful. I'm thankful for each one of the leaders here this day that has shared and poured their lives into each one of us. We have shared with one another. I'm thankful for that. God, I thank you that we can get together like this and put a Christmas spin on leadership. And know that as we do that, we're doing some things that will make a difference for eternity. And God, I also ask that you would just be with us as we move from this place and out into the world that we live in. We've been able to experience a bit of Christmas in July. But God, we all have the opportunity to be Christmas people all year round. And so help us to remember that you're the reason we celebrate. And we have opportunities to share your love in very unique and powerful ways. Help us to do that. Help us to lead well. Help us to lead wisely. It's our prayer this day. In Jesus' name, amen.